Hello and welcome to this week's The Board. I'm Kirsten Donaldson and this is Nathan Donaldson back from his travels.
Back from my travels. And we're both Agile coaches at Boost New Media and Boost Agile.
So today we're going to be talking about Agile in China and also about the Scaled Agile framework and some of the tools associated with Agile. So Nathan, you're just back from China, right?
I am just back from China. I was over there for 2 weeks, got back last week just in time to have an Easter break, which was great.
Exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting over there. There's an enormous amount happening. You haven't been to China yet, have you?
No, I haven't. You're going to see me soon though, right?
Yeah, they will be sending you soon. That's right.
Sure.
Pack your bags, have them ready because you're basically on standby. China's adopting Agile at quite a quick rate, and what we're seeing especially is that a lot of the multinational corporations that are perhaps doing Agile with their teams, or being Agile with their teams in the States, are looking to push that out into their teams around the world, and we're in China to help those teams do that.
So they're already doing that in the States within their organisations there? Or?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that in the States, Agile is now the accepted way of creating software. So where before there was questions about, does Agile work? Should we be using Agile? Is it suitable for this type of work or that type of work? Mm-hmm. People pretty much now just accept that it's the best way to develop software.
Great.
But I think the rest of the world, and certainly New Zealand, is struggling to catch up.
Sure. So what sorts of things are we doing over there in terms of helping people introduce Agile to their organisations?
Yeah, so we've been in China for the last 14 months, and we've largely been working with multinationals and startups. Mm-hmm. It's been really interesting. The work we've been doing lately is about working on Agile at scale. So as large enterprises, how do you actually align the whole of the enterprise around the value streams that you have and delivering on those value streams?
Right, and that's because their projects are much bigger than ours. You can't cope with just your 5 to 10 man team anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about organisations that maybe have 1,000 developers working on, one value stream, or at least 100. We've adopted the Scaled Agile framework as a tool for helping organisations align around those value streams and deliver on a sort of a fixed cadence. And that's having a lot of success. I think there's hundreds of corporations in the States that have adopted it. BMC, John Deere, Discount Tires, people like that. And so we see it having a lot of benefit in China as well.
What do you think the applications for here in New Zealand are? I mean, do we have projects on a scale that would use the Scaled Agile framework? Yeah,
we definitely do. We know some organisations around New Zealand are already using the Scaled Agile framework. I think there's a lot of opportunity with government departments that have large pieces of work. An example might be the iGov login, which is called See Me or Be Me or I Me or something now.
We Me,
yeah. And that's a large piece of work in the tens of millions of dollars, and certainly could benefit from some greater alignment and some efficiencies, I think.
Sure. And then maybe some of that IRD work that's coming up as well.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it, to see what $1 billion, $1.5 billion project could benefit from having greater alignment across the organisation and the whole organisation involved in delivering that value stream rather than just some isolated pockets.
Section. Yeah, of course. Okay, so what sort of tools are you using for Scaled Agile framework?
Well, there's Scaled Agile framework's relatively new, so there's only a few of the existing tool sets out there that have support for it, and the one that we use and has the best safe support. So Scaled Agile frameworks, often abbreviated as SAFE, is Rally Dev, and in fact they have a lot of great information on their site. So Gavin, could you check up the thing?
He's nodding over there, so that's good.
That's good. We like nodding. I'll chuck a link into it for. And Paul says that the iGov logger is going to be called Real Me.
Thanks, Paul.
That's great. So hopefully that link will go up. There may be an aspect of not posting links in here, so
so we'll post it afterwards if that's the case.
Yeah, that's right. So I can see that now. So on the Scaled Agile Framework toolkit, you can see how there's some information there about how it integrates with Rally and some really useful stuff. So we find Rally a really excellent tool. It has had a lot of functionality built out on top of it to specifically support SAFe, so which is fantastic.
Cool. There's a question we had earlier before we started from John about whether through your work in China you've seen any sort of cultural reluctance to adopt agile practices within companies.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and one that we obviously get all the time. China's seen as a pretty hierarchical society, but I think what we've seen with the organisations that we've worked with is that everybody's really striving to do their best and to deliver the most value, and so that really leads to everybody having a similar approach really and a similar passion. If anything, I think it's the culture of large organisations and enterprises which is very hierarchical and what needs to be broken down, and that's the same across the world in a large number of organisations. So I think that the challenges are often just the same.
What other sorts of things have you noticed about working with Agile in China that are specific to China?
Yeah, I suppose one of the things that we've noticed that's not specific to China but is perhaps specific to distributed teams, which a lot of the Chinese teams are, is access to product owners. So often the product owners will be based in the States or in Europe, or there'll be sort of a proxy product owner set up. So these teams are really being sometimes hampered by their access to their product owners, and I think one of the things that's become clear to us over the years is that access to product owner is probably the key aspect of productivity and agility in terms of being able to get those questions answered, moving quickly, being aligned to the vision.
Yeah, I mean, time zones can be a bit of a problem sometimes, if you're working sort of 5 or 6 hours difference and you need an answer quite quickly so that you can keep going. Sometimes you're held up by those time differences, right?
Yeah, totally.
But what sort of things do you see people doing to sort of make sure that they have good contact with the remote POs? I know for us we use face-to-face Skype quite often.
Right.
Rather than just text chat or the phone, because we find that it's much easier to sort of engage with someone and connect with someone if you can see them. Yeah,
definitely. And I think one of the things that I've seen one of your teams doing, Kirsten, is taking product owners through the product via Skype when they can't be there in person. So rather than just waiting until something's ready to be accepted, doing the sort of things that you would do if you had a product owner physically present, using tools like Skype. And I think that's really powerful and really works well with the Agile values of collaboration and such.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for me, working with a remote product owner has been less onerous than I thought it would be, and I think things like video conferencing have really, really helped. I think without it, it would have been quite difficult.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what we see is actually as product owners, overall workload that could be more of a problem than the fact that they're remote. So when I was at the Scrum gathering in Shanghai last year, pretty much every team I talked to was having problems with product ownership. Have we got a technical issue, have we? No? Pretty much every team was having problems with product ownership. And a lot of it was actually that the product owners were looking after 2, 3, maybe 4 teams, or that they had 2 product owners, one in Europe and one in the US. Wow. And they were working on a product that had to take into account the legal situations, and they were being asked to do conflicting things. So not so much the distributed nature of the product owner, but the fact that the product owners weren't working solely with one team, I think is a real issue. Certainly time availability can have a massive impact. I mean, we're all about keeping things moving and making sure we're making progress, so that can be very difficult. One of the exercises we did on the course I was on earlier in the year had teams working on sprints, simulated sprints, and the product owners were shared one between 2 teams. And when we did retros after each sprint, the first thing that came up for all of the teams was we needed greater access to our product owner to be able to move more quickly. So
Yeah.
Often it's the biggest barrier to productivity.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's some exercises you can do to demonstrate that as well, isn't there? There's one that we did with a team recently as a demonstration, whereby they were asked to produce something with just a word description of what that product was and didn't have any access to the product owner during the making of that product. And then we did another round where they did have access to asking questions. And of course, the products that were produced in both rounds were vastly different. So it's quite a nice exercise.
Was it the quality or the quantity that was different?
It was the quality. I mean, it was the exercise is done with a graphic picture with a number of different shapes. So of course the team doesn't see the picture; they just see a description written down on the story. So if they can't work with the product owner, it's very hard from a written description to say, oh, there's a square somewhere in the picture. So then if they can ask them, is the square near the top left or whatever, So it was a good exercise, and I think it really showed that team why the product owner needs to be there throughout a sprint. So I quite enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's an interesting phenomenon that we're seeing in the Agile world and other places as well, which is a lot more teaching through games. Yeah,
it works really well. I mean, it also really breaks up a training session, because quite often there is a bit of someone standing up talking, that's inevitable. So if you can have these activities, it really it's a nice icebreaker for the people who are attending. It's a great way of showing how things work. And of course, experiential learning is a really effective way of someone learning something.
Totally. We've got a couple of good comments here. Petty Morgan is saying that she could imagine it's difficult to provide one voice with distributed product owners, and that's completely true, and especially when you've got them in different legal jurisdictions. Wanting features that may be legal in one but may be problematic in another. Teams often struggle with this, especially overseas, but we see it here to a certain extent as well. I'd be interested to know if anybody in the audience, the vast audience that we have today, has had any experience with working with distributed product owners. And Paul's got a question about, do we think simulated sprints are a necessity when training people to use Scrum?
I think it's a great idea. I know that you've found it really helpful when you're doing some training recently. And I think it is quite mysterious to new teams. If they can't experience at least an example or mini sprint, they go into their first sprint with really not that much of an idea of the practicalities of it, because you can talk all you like, but actually doing something is the way that sinks in. Yeah,
definitely. And I think also it might not be a necessity, but it's just a really useful tool.
Sure.
So and even though I've been involved in Agile projects for 6 or 7 years, doing a simulated sprint exercise in a training in February still gave me new learnings. So it's not that it's trying to show you what it's going to be exactly like working in a team. What it's doing is it's giving you some of the experiences and trying to condense it down into something more sort of high pressure to bring those to the top and to the front more obviously, so that you can think about them and reflect on them.
So what sort of things did you experience during that were kind of new? I mean, what was an example of that?
It was interesting because we had to form as a team very quickly. So there were 7 of us around a table, all very experienced Agile practitioners. And so we had to form as a team. We had to do prioritization. We had to do estimation. And it was interesting to see the different backgrounds that people had and how that brought them to different decisions. Then the work had to be pulled by individuals or by small groups within the team, and we had to have confirmation constantly from the product owner that what we were doing was correct and to the standards that they needed. So it was very interesting.
Cool. All right. So we've got a book to give away this week. It's called Software in 30 Days. Got that on the right bit. Yeah, there we go. By Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland, the creators of Scrum. So this book is for managers, and it's about introducing Agile, specifically Scrum, to enterprise organisations. It really is a very practical book that sort of takes people through not only the specifics of Scrum, which is included as an appendix at the back, it's the Scrum guide, but also things like how to handle communication about introducing it to your organisation, and how to handle it correctly. It talks about things like don't rely on rumour, because it's always going to be tinged by someone's opinion, but actually use proper communication and things like that. So I think it also talks about why to use Agile practices in Scrum, so as opposed to methods like waterfall. So it talks about the differences. It has some quotes from some prominent people, for example, the CTO of Marks and Spencer's in the UK, and talking about times that they had used agile practices and why they don't fully use them. So very interesting for managers, and we'd recommend it. But if you want to get a copy of this book, what do we normally do? Email in?
I think we'll try something different today. So what about the next person to ask a question?
Nice one.
Next person to ask a question can win that book.
Yeah.
Obviously, don't put your contact details in the question unless you like lots of spam. But so ask away, and this book will be sent out to you. Thanks for that, Kirsten. That's great. So, just touching back on SAFe and the Scaled Agile framework again, I think one of the things that is interesting about SAFe is that it talks to all levels of the organisation. So, I think one of the problems we've had with Agile in the past is that often it only seems to talk to the teams, and so we say to the teams, you're the most important unit within the organisation, and everybody else is an impediment.
It does feel like that a bit.
It does sometimes, right? And so the great thing about SAFe is it gives everybody in the organisation, from the leadership down, an opportunity to be involved in the creation of this value, and gives them a very clear understanding of how they can be of most value to the teams that are doing the work. So we're still using Scrum most often at that team level to deliver the work, and to deliver on the vision that the product owners and managers have. But we're saying, hey, let's all get together and deliver on this, not we're just a small team working on our own over here, leave us alone. So I think that's been incredibly powerful, and what we're seeing is that teams are really embracing that and delivering value much more quickly. Okay, so I think we've got a question from Petty. How much does it cost if I don't win it? Well, the great thing is that you have won it, so yeah, nice work. Yeah, but unfortunately I can't post links, but I can tell you that it costs $19.16 US for the paperback on Amazon, or $16.47 for the Kindle edition. Actually, that could be New Zealand dollars. So we'll get that out to you, Petty. I actually do know your contact details, so that's handy. Nathan, I was going to ask you, what are some good resources if people want to start looking at the Scaled Agile framework? So I think the place to start is scaledagileFramework.com. So that has the big picture and is full of clickable links. So I'm not sure if Gavin can go to scaledagileFramework.com and pop that up. Let's see if the technology has caught up with our ambitions. Yeah. There's about 120,000 words behind the diagram. It's amazing. So everything you click on has an explanation. And there's a great book which let's have a look at next time, called Scaling Agile Software Requirements, or Agile Software Requirements. Let me see if I can find it on Amazon here. By Dean Leffingwell, the creator of the yes, it's called Agile Software Requirements by Dean Leffingwell. So he's the head methodologist of the Scaled Agile framework. Agile Software Requirements is the book to get. He does have a previous book called Scaling Agile, which is not the one to get. Right. Well, we'll put a link up to that afterwards. Yeah, definitely. So you can get the right one. And so, Gav, do you want to click into some stuff and just show people that just click into some stuff on that website to show people that there's a lot of information behind it, so you can show them as you click. That could happen, possibly. So Paul's got a great question. How are interdependencies between stories reduced, handled and safe? So we'll let Gavin have a bit of a click around in the background there as we talk. Gav, it'd be great if you would go back to the main big picture. So the home page. Gav, the home page. I think he's getting there. Yeah. There's a bit of a delay on it. There is a bit of a delay. So what I'd like you to actually click on is the icons within the big picture, because that's where all the links to the information are. Yeah, that's right. So each of the things that you click on there has a lot of information. Okay, so I'm not sure what Gav's up to there.
I'm sure he's doing his best.
I'm sure he is doing his best, but I'm afraid that today that's just not good enough. Touching on Paul's question about interdependencies, one of the things that happens during the release planning is that the teams get together and they build a board of dependencies. So we use, traditionally in Safe, you'd use red yarn to go from story to story across teams to create a visual, a big visual information radiator of the dependencies. The process of making it visible is the first step to solving those dependencies. So it's a really powerful tool. I think one of the things we found in Agile is anytime we can make something visible to everybody, we can immediately start to improve on the situation.
Yeah, actually, we were just talking yesterday about a team who are new to Scrum, and one of their stakeholders has really engaged with the board recently, the Scrum board, and is quite impressed by I can see everything happening, and I think that kind of crept up on him as well. He wasn't expecting that, but once he saw it in action, he was like, "This is really useful," which is nice.
Definitely, it's nice to see also often that can really short circuit that constant request for status updates, right?
For sure, yeah.
When the board's in a fantastically visible place, maybe in a hallway or in a common workspace where management and others are walking past it all the time, they can see the progress. It feels a lot more real than the abstract sort of reports that we used to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Did that answer your question, Paul, around interdependencies? I know it was a short answer, but is there anything you'd like clarified?
Sure, there's a long answer there somewhere.
There is a long answer there.
So, what else have we got this week? Have you got any more thoughts on China, Nathan, since you're just back?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Sure. I think one of the things that I've noticed when I talk to people about China is they don't quite realise the scale of things over there.
Give us some facts and figures.
Some facts and figures, okay. So one of the interesting things that's happened lately is that the Shanghai municipal government is putting up a $2 billion fund for companies to use for R&D on the Internet of Things, so the interconnectedness of appliances and objects.
Oh yeah, you were talking about that the other day. Sounds really interesting.
So $2 billion, that's a substantial amount of money. So if you are doing work on the Internet of Things and you need some free office space and some money, then head to China.
Because it's that simple, yeah?
Well, in some ways it is. There's another interesting fact is that Shanghai has a large number of incubators and high-tech parks, and some of them are just massive. I don't know any other way to describe them. So one of the ones we visited was 800,000 square meters of office space on 24 hectares of park and amenities. Now, 800,000 square meters, I think that's roughly 8 million square feet.
Yeah.
No,
I'm just saying.
I Cameron was shaking his head, and I thought that my math was completely wrong. But I think it's about 8 million square feet for the Imperials. And that's just one of maybe 20 of these types of parks in Shanghai. When I arrived over to the office last week or the week before, there was a flyer, and we'd been contacted by someone offering us a space in one of these free for 3 years, plus an incentive of cash to do a fit out. It's quite amazing.
Wow.
So, and you look at companies like Huawei, they've got 140,000 employees, so not the biggest company in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but they've got 70,000 developers, 60,000 in-house developers, 10,000 outsourced developers, and they're all in a small number of locations. It's an enormous number of people working together to deliver these value streams. And
yeah, it is quite hard for us to imagine here in New Zealand. I guess that once you've been over there and you sort of see the scale of everything over there, it all starts to make a little more sense. But
yeah, that's right. And it's not that these are just one-offs. These are one of many examples of large scale. Even the startups we're talking to over there often have 800 to 2,000 developers. You're lucky to find a startup in New Zealand with 8 developers, let alone 800. And there's a lot of aspects to that which we probably don't have time to go into today, but I think it's fair to say that we're going to see a lot of innovation coming out of China in the next few years. We're not seeing just copying of ideas from other places. It's a lot of new stuff happening. one of the reasons that I don't think we're seeing a lot of it is that a lot of the Chinese innovations actually really focused on the domestic market,
China,
because 1.4 billion people, the domestic market's huge. There's, I think the last statistic I saw was 22 million people joining the internet a month.
Yeah, it's
China.
really unbelievable numbers, isn't it?
It is. So that's the population of Australia joining the internet each month.
Yeah.
And I understand now also that China's e-commerce spend has outgrown the US's e-commerce spend. So I think there's still people under the misapprehension that the Chinese don't buy things online. But if you talk to anyone in China, then they buy pretty much everything on Taobao. So worth checking out. Yeah.
So what's Taobao? Is that like some massive shop online?
It's like Chinese eBay.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Or New Zealand Trade Me, but much bigger.
Yeah, like New Zealand Trade Me, but much bigger. There's people making very substantial livings over there, essentially out of their bedrooms. I don't know anybody who buys, the necessities anywhere except Taobao now.
Wow.
In China, and the infrastructure in China is kind of different from here and in the States. So perhaps if you're in the States and you buy something, it'll get shipped to you by FedEx or DHL, and it might come overnight, which is great. But it's kind of an expensive way to do things. So in Taobao, if I buy something in Shanghai, for instance, often it will come through a very small courier company and it might arrive later that afternoon.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, but sometimes it might take a day or two as well. It just really depends how people have set up. But there's a lot of tiny independent courier companies that can service the inner city quite easily and quickly.
Yeah, I mean, and that's happening in other places as well. Bigger centres like London are able to deliver things the same day now, but obviously not so much in New Zealand.
No, not so much in New Zealand. I think we obviously have a small population. New Zealand has a population of about 4 million. We have a couple of big players in the market, and it doesn't work like that. So, but this is straight off the topic of Agile to a certain extent.
It is, yeah.
And what we are seeing in China is we're seeing organisations using Agile beyond software development. We're seeing there's a factory in Shanghai that uses Scrum to manage its whole factory. We're seeing quite a bit of Agile being used in the marketing space, which is interesting. So there's an Agile marketing meetup in Shanghai. So we'll post that when we get finished here. Does anybody have any other questions before we go today? Pop them through. What are we going to be talking about next time, Kirsten?
You tell me.
That's a good question. I think next time we'll be talking, it'll be Paul back in. Paul's having a break this week. I'll perhaps be away next week, so Paul and Kirsten will be fielding your questions. Feel free to send us an email at info@boost.co.nz with any questions you might have ahead of time, or anything you'd like us to cover in particular.
We'll probably put a blog post about a week in advance with what we're going to be talking about, I'd imagine, once we decide. Yeah,
perhaps we could, if there's some interest, we could have a discussion on Agile games.
Oh, yeah. Let me make a note.
Yeah, I think we've got a video of a game we played a couple of weeks ago. So
we do. We've had a link to that before.
Maybe we can cut it in live to the broadcast.
We could try something fancy like that if Gab's up for it.
Yeah, so let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, well, thanks for joining us again, Nathan. Swooping in after your China trip and then swooping out again. I think that's probably it for today, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.